it's been a while. Welcome back to Full Toss 4. I think this is episode 4. Is this episode 4?
Yeah, it
Yeah,
is.
yes, it
Oh,
is.
I mean, the guest knows. Speaking of that, we have a guest this episode. Hello, Mr. Yug Jen.
Hi, thanks for calling me on this podcast. I'm doing you a big
Welcome.
favor here, aren't I?
Fun fact to the
Yes.
podcast viewers out there. If you currently see a still image on your window, that is because Yug Jen is filming on a Nokia 3310. Therefore, his frames per second is about 1. I can't do much about it, so I'm just probably going to put a still image there.
Yeah.
Enjoy that. Anyway, so first of all, we have a lot to catch up on. So much for a weekly podcast because it's been a month since the last one. But a lot has happened in that month as well, so we'll get to each of them one by one. So let's just jump right into it so we don't waste any time. Let's talk about the recent India versus Sri Lanka series, or at least what's happened so far. So we've had the ODI series, obviously. India's won that 2-1, but lots of debuts in that series. What do you guys make of that?
I think it's just an opportunity for all the young guys to just show what they can do in different conditions. Like Sri Lanka doesn't have so many such different conditions to India, but it's still different. And I think the Indian team is just trying to get them underway to try to build a team for the 21 T20 World Cup. But I think it's a good thing they're doing because they need a few replacements. Because if you see the top 11 of India, that's really strong, but then the substitutes aren't that strong. They're just trying to, have many backup options for that. That's my point of view, I think. And I think they're doing a good thing here. I'm just disappointed that Padikkal couldn't get a debut because he looked really promising in the IPL. And I thought he deserved at least one match. But I think the T20 series is coming and he can maybe make a debut there. But I think it's like locked out by Dhawan and Shaw, so the opening spots. So
Well, to be
No,
fair,
that's a
yeah,
good
I
thing.
think
I can see Padikkal making a debut in the T20.
I think he'll open. I think Shaw might go out.
Well, they could play all three, to be fair. Like, I can perfectly see Shaw dropping down to a number 3 position. But then, the thing with India is
I
we all
mean,
have
he
all these
did.
players, so it's very hard to fit everyone in, obviously. I can even see
Yeah.
Dhawan dropping himself for if you win the series 2 matches in. He probably could drop himself for that last game,
I mean,
maybe.
I mean, for some reason,
who?
I don't see that happening.
Yeah, I mean, he's the
That
captain.
is fair. He's like the third captain, so I don't know how far you can go
Yeah,
when it comes to
you
dropping
won't gonna
guys.
do that.
I mean, you could make Bhuvi captain or something, or like Hardik Pandya.
It
Not
would be, it
Pandya.
would be
No,
Bhuvi.
I
It would be
I
yeah,
Bhuvi.
don't
it'd
think
probably be him, but
movie.
I doubt it's gonna happen. Because I mean, Dhawan could have done that if he wanted in third ODI, but he didn't. So
Well, Dhawan
But
himself
let's
needs some game time, so I mean,
let's even be sort of fair here to Dhawan because see, like his spot in the World Cup is not yet 100% confirmed. Like mostly he's gonna be there, but he doesn't want to take that chance. He wants to show everybody that he's a good player. He's still in the form he was in the IPL, like hitting 2 centuries in a row and all that. And he still needs to showcase that he's still in that form to be certain in the playing 11 for the World T20. So I don't see him dropping himself. I can see him dropping Shaw and get Padikkal in because if you move Shaw to 3, you'll have to drop someone else, and then there's no point of having so many debuts because you're not giving them enough chances anyway. So if you don't want to give them enough chances, why are you letting them play?
I mean, yeah, and one more thing about that Dhawan 2 centuries in a row. If you see the innings before he got his first 100 and the innings he got his after he got his second 100, both were ducks.
to be
So
fair, that's how the game works. I mean, you win some, you lose some, quite literally in this kind of case. But
yeah,
my point of view when it comes to the Dhawan deal is, I mean, like you said, Dhawan's spot in the playing 11, like the starting 11, is not confirmed because we've used Rohit Kohli before, but before that we've used Rohit and KL, who've worked really well as an opening duo. So even though Dhawan himself is in great form when it comes to T20s, maybe when it comes to strike rate, maybe when it comes to international form, KL and Rohit have surpassed him for a while. So he'd be looking at these T20s as like a means of showing that I'm still here. I should still be opening the batting. But when it comes to everyone else in the ODI series, even though we did lose that last game when we made 5 debuts, but I was still pretty impressed by the new players. So we'll go through them one by one. But first, I'll start off with the player of the series, Surya Kumar Yadav. So obviously, the dude had played the T20 series against England earlier this year, and he impressed there as well. It's a perfect dynamic player you need in the middle order, the guy who can take the game away from the opposition and play a quick fire innings, if not even a long form innings. He can play like an anchor role. And that's really what stemmed from him ever since he moved to Mumbai Indians in the IPL. Because I remember before that he was at KKR and he was playing that finishing role down at number 6 and 7. They didn't really utilize him well. Common factor with KKR there. But after that, when he went to MI, he started to perform better up the order. That's what got him here in the first place. And now when he makes his ODI debut, he plays that exact same role. So he can arrest the collapse. He can finish the innings well, and if needed, he can provide that up and run rate that we need in the middle overs usually when the spinners are on and stuff. So I think he plays that role perfectly. So what do you guys think of?
Yeah, I mean, he's not only like it's not even saying he literally just proved it in the series, like in the second ODI where he was the anchor who stayed in, and that 50 was super important for us. Like not to demoralize Chahar, but Surya Kumar Yadav's innings was super important. That too under so much pressure, like second ODI of your whole thing, and your team is in a losing position and to get that innings and not even like above a strike rate of 100, which for an ODI in that amount of pressure is impressive.
Yeah, given the context and the amount of wickets that were falling as well. Yeah, I
Yeah.
agree.
Yeah, and the thing is that he was able to support the other players too, which is very important. Um, like it, certain players just close off in such pressure. Like they're not able to play their natural game because they're trying to save wickets. But Surya Kumar Yadav just came out and played the way he wanted to, and look how that saved India. They were going nowhere. They were collapsing at 210, 220 in that match. And then he just comes and plays how he wants and he saved India from losing the match.
Not even
So
210, 120.
But to be fair, he got out at 160 for 6. So, I mean, there was obviously a lot more to be done at that point in time. But
Yeah.
yeah, like you said, and the fact that he got the strike rate up as well, right? That obviously left less for the lower order to do because you still have the amount of time to do like what Chahar did. He was able to bat out 82 balls. So, that enough time was left for him to do what he can do. And by going at a strike rate of 120, he kept the pressure on the bowling of Sri Lanka. So that's the kind of innings that you'd expect from like a number 3, number 4 player in such a situation to just keep the pressure on the opposition.
Yeah.
Yeah.
yep.
So so he played his role perfectly. Deserved man of the series for me. Obviously, Avishka Fernando did score more runs, but unfortunately ended up on the losing side. He was also pretty impressive in the series, by the way, Avishka Fernando.
Yeah, he was.
I remember
I
him
was
in the
actually
World Cup.
I was actually very impressed by Rajapaksa.
Mm-hmm.
If you saw him bat in the first ODI, he was looking really smooth, and then he just lost his wicket. Second match, he got up for a duck, so let's just leave that out. And for the third ODI too, yesterday, he played really well. I mean, if you saw him bat, it was actually quite fluent because I saw Fernando for the first two ODIs and he got quite lucky. He was edging a lot and all that, and you know, he wasn't looking very comfortable at the crease, but he still got runs. But Rajapaksa was looking rather comfortable by the likes of all the bowlers who bowled, like Bhuvi Chahar and all. They're top class bowlers, and he was just looking really comfortable. So I was sort of disappointed that he didn't score a very big score. Like yesterday,
Yeah.
he scored about 60 or something. I'm not sure, but
65, yeah.
yeah. And I thought if he could just survive for a little more time, he would have got 100. Like I was disappointed he didn't get one. He was looking really good. So
Yeah.
The thing is with players like Rajapaksa and Fernando obviously I remember him in the 2019 World Cup. He hit 100 against West Indies, I believe, and he was hailed as a prospect at the time. So he's had less game time of late. I've been following Sri Lanka cricket for a bit, so yeah,
Sri Lanka.
he hasn't gotten as much game time. Not many players have in the first place, but especially him. And I obviously wanted him to perform well this series. And he did. He performed his role at the top of the order very well. And Rajapaksha, as you said as well. I remember seeing him in the. He played T20 series against Pakistan last year, last year, and he impressed a lot. Even then. So he's that again, like you said, very fluent player in the middle order, kind of similar to the Surya Kumar Yadav kind of role because very dynamic middle order player can take the game away from an opposition with a high strike rate. So yeah,
Yeah, so the next person I want to talk about is Rahul Chahar. In that he got debut in the third ODI, and I mean he did really well. He bowled the full 10 overs and got 3 wickets, and those 3 wickets were very important time. He was able to get the I think he was it the opening wicket, but the second wicket maybe, but he was able to those wickets were well set up. So if he saw the full over of where he got the wicket, he would bowl all the balls to the batsman, and then one would be wide, and that ball would be the one where the batsman edges and it goes to slip. And yeah,
he got his wickets
he was-
towards the end. He got Fernando, Shanaka, and
He got
Karunaratne. So
yes.
towards the end was giving him more like a glimmer of hope. But yeah, like you said, he did go well first time.
I actually wanted to talk about Chamika Karunaratne
Mm-hmm.
and the way he impressed me. Like yesterday, I saw him bowl, and if you have seen the Pakistani bowler Mohammad Abbas, if you've seen him bowl, he doesn't actually have pace, but he bowls the he bowls in the right spot, and that actually makes a batsman dance at times. Like I remember England Pakistan Test series was going on like a year ago or so, and Abbas was making the likes of Joe Root and all struggle just because he was bowling at 120 at the right spots. Karunaratne is a similar bowler. He doesn't have pace. He's faster than Abbas, but he's bowling in the right places and he's getting results. And even his batting, he's coming in at what, number 9, number 8 or something, and he's coming in hitting 40 runs. That's really impressive for a lower order batsman to do. And I mean, I can see him taking over the role of someone like Angelo Matthews, a medium pacer who can bowl and a guy who can bat, you know, and that can be fundamental for Sri Lanka because they've not had that all rounder for a long time now. Ever since Matthews lost his, touch and all, he wasn't bowling much, and then Sri Lanka never really had an all rounder. But now seeing Karunaratne perform so well against such a good team like of India, it's just impressive to see how he's, doing his all round performance.
Well, yeah, about Karunaratne, you mentioned the comparison with Abbas. Abbas is already a very high class bowler as it is, and you mentioned about accuracy, like landing in the right spots every time, so that pace doesn't really matter. Yeah, that reminded me of like Vernon Philander because when he was playing as well, his pace wasn't very high, but the accuracy is incredible. Obviously, they don't bowl over like 140, maybe 120s, 130s, but that really doesn't matter when you have seam and swing. But Karunaratne, like for me, impressed obviously more with the bat. So, like you said, instead of a more Matthews role, I think he could do more of a finishing role, like with Hasaranga, what he does usually. So those lower order like finishers slash bowlers, those are there for Sri Lanka as well. Technically, Udana has done that in the past as well, but his bowling has not usually been up to the mark as of late.
I mean, I'm just seeing this
yeah,
now. In the second ODI, Karunaratne was actually the fifth bowler to be introduced. And yesterday I saw him bowl. He was actually bowling well with the new ball yesterday, and he was bowling well with the old ball too, at least in the second ODI. And his stats are 6 overs, 1 maiden, and 26 runs. I mean, that match, it you don't like no other bowler has actually bowled so well against them. Like
well,
I'm not talking about the wicket score, but he's kept the pressure on from one end.
Well,
Karunaratne.
to be fair, Shanaka, 8 overs, 1 for 33. But anyway, Besides that point, yeah, Jamaica Karunaratne. I remember seeing him bowl against Australia in 2018 when they had that Test series in Australia. He was one of the like five pacers used by Sri Lanka in that series. He didn't do obviously very well because it's Australia, but he still, like you said, had that ability of landing it in one spot and being more accurate than with pace. So I mean, he was used more as a batting all-rounder. I feel this series he didn't bowl nearly as much overs as he would usually do. He's usually a frontline pace bowler. Uh, but yeah. So to the viewers, if you don't understand what's been going on, why there's so many cuts that you have seen, it's because in Abhi's place, apparently they're constructing the fucking Burj Khalifa all over again, and that's why there's endless constructions out there. So if you hear any banging in the background, I promise it's not something explicit. It's just merely construction work. That's also the reason you hear me laughing sometimes. I promise I'm not making fun of the Indian team. It's merely the fact that someone in Abhi's place is very excited.
So, West Indies beating Australia actually just like proved that they're actually a good team and that they're not. They had a few rough years after the 2016 World T20 where West Indies won in India, but after that they haven't exactly had the best team, and because of that they haven't been winning a lot of matches. But now beating a team like Australia is actually just saying that we are here now. We are gonna give you a good challenge, and I'm really excited to see how West Indies could do in the World T20s.
I think that West Indies did a really good job beating Australia 4-1 because such a strong team like Australia, and they also have like proper bowlers and batsmen for their team, and I think West Indies proved that they're ready for the T20 World Cup, like you said. They've showed that they're here. Yeah.
Yeah, well, the funny thing about that is the West Indies got beaten by South Africa right before the series. Like, was it 3-0? I don't know if it's. No, just 2-1 or something. I don't know how many matches that was. Just spouting out numbers. But they did. South Africa did beat West Indies right before that. So after that series, and in that series, West Indies were at full strength because they had Pollard. But this series, Pollard didn't play a single game, which ideally made it a worse West Indies team, but they still cleaned up Australia. And the thing about Australia is obviously we picture it as like a strong team in all formats of the game. But truth is, they're not a very good T20 team, and they haven't won a single T20 World Cup ever. And they are very inconsistent when it comes to that. They've lost to much lower ranked teams before. So, I mean, I'm just saying, like, Australia isn't as strong as people make them out to be in T20 cricket, despite the players that they
Yeah.
have, the caliber of players that they have. It might just be the fact that other teams have players that are geared towards T20s, and especially West Indies have players that are geared towards the T20s as well, rather than the other formats. So they're more T20 specialists, while in Australia's case, they play a lot of their players from the ODI and Test squads in their T20 teams. So they're not exactly specialists, which means they're not exactly fluent, but they have the BBL. So they have a roster of players that are slowly coming in through there. It'll take time, but Australia aren't a top tier T20 team, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at West Indies and Test, they are pretty whack right now. They're losing to almost every single team. They haven't won a series in how many
Well, they beat
months? Oh, well, yeah. Anyways, I think yeah, the whole team is built for a T20 team, and they might have a chance. They have a chance of winning this T20 World Cup as well. But there is India and England, so.
Yeah, India, England, and I think Pakistan also. But
Pakistan.
we'll come up with we'll talk more about the T20 World Cup in a later episode because there's obviously so much to talk about in the build up to that as well over the next few months. So it'll be interesting to watch that. But when it comes to the West Indies Australia series, there's an ODI series currently ongoing. Australia demolished West Indies in the first ODI. Then the second ODI was actually postponed. It was supposed to be held, I think, 2 days ago, and they postponed it because of a positive COVID test in one of the teams. update now, as of today when we're recording this, is that they're all negative tests. There's not a single positive test left. So they will be playing the second ODI tomorrow. So who do you guys think is going to win that? But I mean, they would have already finished by the time this podcast comes out. But who do you think is going to win the ODI series as a whole?
Wait, so
Wait,
1 second, I'm just reading some news now for today's match. It's saying that the second ODI between West Indies and Australia has been postponed.
But
yeah,
then
that's what we're talking about.
there's another news right after that that says it's the negative tests and the ODI will be held tomorrow.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I just want to say is, Australia are missing their middle order batsmen like Maxwell and Stoinis. They're both really good in both T20 and ODI, and Australia middle order right now is pretty horrible, and that's what kind of let them down in the T20 series. Uh,
Hmm.
yeah.
But to be fair, I would still like Mitchell Marsh had an outstanding T20 series. I think he had 350s of some sort there, and I've always rated him higher than Stoinis when it comes to a middle order all rounder because Marsh himself can provide the big hits and is somehow more consistent than Stoinis, even though Marsh isn't consistent himself. So I think he would slot into that middle order perfectly. I think Alex Carey is a good wicketkeeper slot option because admittedly they don't have a lot of them. They have Josh
Ooh,
Phillips.
they have Wade. Wade is.
Well, Wade isn't a like first choice keeper anymore. He's more of a fielder nowadays.
Is he not?
No,
Who? Wait, who?
he did keep like a couple games, but he's more of a backup keeper. If Wade and Carey are in the same game, Carey keeps. So it's like that.
Wait,
And
who opened for Australia T20?
In the T20s, it was Wade and
Finch.
Finch, yeah.
I think according to me, Stoinis can be a really good all rounder if he's sent up to opening the batting.
In
Because
T20s, I agree, yeah.
in T20s, because he really takes advantage of the power play. He likes to play his loft shots, which is really effective during the power play, and even his bowling. If you actually check this out in IPL 2020, the it happened in Dubai and DC. They sent Stoinis to open very late in the tournament, and the match he opened, Stoinis, he scored about 40 odd runs, and then he came to bowl and took 3 wickets. Stoinis was bowling even before that, and he wasn't taking as many wickets. Even in the next match when Stoinis opened, he batted really well and even bowled really well. So basically, I'm just trying to say that I don't know how, but when Stoinis opens, his bowling also improves. And if you actually use that in the correct way, like actually Pant did in the IPL, Australia can have a huge advantage there. Having Stoinis and Finch open, like they're two batsmen who can just blast from the word go, right? And that's something Australia can get a huge advantage from.
But I
In my
mean, yeah, that could be like a Kohli situation, moving him like from three to
to, to
opener.
open.
And but I mean, I doubt that's gonna happen. They could switch Stoinis and Wade, to be honest, because Wade can play middle order as well, and they could do that. But I don't think they will because Stoinis can flop when he opens, and Australia can have a big collapse when they.
Well,
And
I mean,
another reason that might not happen is to simply keep the right-left combination.
yeah, I
So
was gonna point out we're forgetting David Warner. He's the first choice guy when it comes to opening with Aaron Finch. So you're not playing any of the first choice guys right here. Ideally, it would still be Finch, Warner, Smith, and then you can move from there. But the middle order, I would assume, would now consist of Marsh, Maxwell, and
I mean,
Carey after that, because that seems like a perfect order of batsmen. Marsh does well up the order. Smith is your anchor. Warner is your aggressive opener. Finch is your anchor opener, and you have a perfect dynamic for a top seven.
okay,
yeah.
wait. So I have a question for you guys. Do you think someone like Labuschagne can replace someone like Smith? Because now, if you see, Smith and Labuschagne are very similar batsmen. In the way they play. They both play the anchor role in all formats. And the thing is that Labuschagne has been bowling a lot too, and he's actually getting really good results. So if Australia can get something like that at a number three batsman, why should they go with Smith instead of Labuschagne?
Well, I mean, there's a couple of reasons for that. Number one, Labuschagne hasn't played a single T20I, so it isn't good for a guy debuting just right before the T20
For the
World
World
Cup.
Cup.
He's played T20s before, yeah. He's doing really well in the NatWest Blast in England, but it's obviously much different from the international level. Smith himself, as of late, in series against he did play against India earlier when India went to Australia. He's played T20s against England as well, and in all those games, he is impressed as well. He's performed the anchor role. He's hit a couple of 50s as well. I remember he's only played a few T20Is as of late, resting often for those. But in the ones that he has played, I remember against Pakistan. This might be 2 years ago, but still, against Pakistan, he had like two 50s in two different chases. So he can anchor a chase pretty well as well. So when it comes to Smith versus Labuschagne in T20s, even though Labuschagne's doing really well recently, I would still start with Smith. However, like Australia have a tour of Bangladesh coming up. I mean, if they could get Labuschagne in for that and give him a couple of games to see how he can do, then I can totally see him performing a Smith-like role. Especially since Smith himself may not be playing the T20 World Cup. Like he said himself that he has a little bit of a niggle, and he might miss the T20 World Cup in favor of so that he can play the Ashes. So if that does happen, then they could get Labuschagne in. But obviously
Yeah,
that is
and
very complicated. But that's
I mean, this isn't related to the T20 World Cup, but Labuschagne has been amazing in the last 2-3 years in tests. He's scored the most runs in the World Test Championship, and I think he has the most 50s in the last 3 years.
Yeah, I mean
Uh,
he's been the one of the best Test batsmen going around in the last few years. The only thing preventing him from
yeah,
being the best is obviously he hasn't played in all conditions, but that's not his fault. So, but the thing is, yeah, like coming back to the T20s, in my opinion, he can play the Smith role perfectly well. Like you can slot him in and he can do well. I think like when in Australia toured England last year for limited overs games, in one of the warm up games for that, he hit 100 as an opener. When Australia played some warm up games then, so he has the caliber. But the thing is, he needs game time, he needs game practice, and Australia has to give him that. And they chose to rest him for the West Indies series. Rest him, I put in big quotation marks because he's still playing in the T20 Blast. But they chose to pick everyone else above him, and I think that was a mistake. I don't see why they couldn't have played him. He's playing cricket anyway.
yeah.
But yeah, so if he gets game time and he does well, I can totally see him being a starter in that 11, really.
Yeah, and he even gets that all-round capabilities in because it can never hurt to have an extra bowler in your team,
Mm-hmm.
right? So that's why again coming back to Stoinis, that's why I think he's a really good player because if he if he does well, it will be a huge plus for Australia if they could somehow play both Stoinis and Labuschagne. Like order could be either Warner, Stoinis, and Labuschagne because I'm not seeing Finch in really good form. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm not following him much, but
Uh,
if Finch isn't in good form, why can't we do that?
well, I mean, the thing with that combination is obviously, first of all, a bit of a problem. Finch is Australia's captain, so I don't think you're gonna chuck out the captain like straight away, and he's not in bad form as well. I think I might be wrong here, but I still think he's in the top 5 T20 rankings for batsmen in T20I cricket. He's been in the top 10 for ages now, but I think he's still in the top 5. I mean, obviously, I can check that up right now. But besides the point, Finch is, I think, still your starting opener. Soines can be a backup opener because solely for the reason that he's done well in BBL as an opener. But even in the last season as an opener in BBL, he didn't do as well. But in the previous 2 seasons, he did really well. So he can obviously be a backup option. But I don't even see him making the top 15 if I'm being very honest, because when it comes to top opener slots, I still think Wade slots in above him when it comes to an opener slot. And even if not, I don't see him playing a mid-order role because, like you said, he thrives on the power play overs because less fielders outside the circle, less spin bowled then as well. He's shown a weakness, especially to leg spin, throughout his career, really. Right? And I mean, especially when we think of his performance at the IPL, that's been a weakness for him as well. So Yeah, I mean, he could still be a backup of a backup, but I don't see him really making the top 15 for the T20 World Cup. Labuschagne, like you said, I can see him totally making the squad. He should make the squad. Like I don't see why he wouldn't.
Yeah.
Even if he hasn't played a game, he should make the squad. He won't make the starting 11, but he should make the squad. Yeah. Mitch Marsh, I think he's the better all rounder than Stoinis, and he'll make the cut, especially after this West Indies series. He should make the cut pretty easily. Yeah, so I guess we can move on from West Indies Australia unless someone has to say something.
No.
Okay.
No.
All right. So let's talk a bit about South Africa versus Ireland because that's also going on right now. South Africa are cheering Ireland. A bit of a surprise there because Ireland drew the ODIs against South Africa. They won the first one. So what do you guys make of that? Have you been following that series?
Not a lot. I just remember reading the headlines for the first match that Ireland won.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it
So
was very surprising as well because South Africa have actually a bunch of good players for their limited overs, and they have been doing well. I think they beat West Indies recently, but it was a close series, 3-2, T20. Yeah. Uh, that was like Shamsi. He's been performing recently. He's been getting wickets, and also he's been very economical. And then you look at David Miller. He's also just being the normal David Miller. uh,
Well,
yeah.
the thing is with South Africa, like, I have a lot to say about South Africa because the reason being, like, they're in a rebuilding phase. Like, they've been in a rebuilding phase for ages now, but more so because like players like Amla, AB, and Duplessis have phased out. Even the bowlers like Stain and Philander have they've all left within a space of like 2 years. So now you're left with this young group of players from the domestic circuit that have to rebuild this team. But they still have very impressive players. Like if you look just straight through the order, openers
Yeah.
you still have Quinton de Kock. Didn't do really well as a captain when he was a captain, but without captaincy, he's still thriving. He hit that 100 against Ireland in the third ODI. And in the T20s against West Indies, he had a couple of 50s. So he's still in really good nick, and he provides that aggressive top order option that South Africa really needs. And he opens with sorry, do you want to say something?
Makaram.
Well, I mean, he opens with Gentleman Malan.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Malan has also done well. I think Malan and De Kock had like a 200 run partnership recently.
Yeah,
That was the third ODI.
Yeah. The thing with Yanam and Malan is, I mean, I've kept track of him for a while now. He's been a really good domestic player for ages now, like in both List A cricket and first class cricket. So I was expecting him to make his debut anyway. I think he made his debut against Australia right after the World Cup last year, or maybe in 2020. But it was in the series that South Africa whitewashed Australia in ODIs, which was a huge surprise in itself. That was last year. And but that was where he really shone. And now he's played only six innings, I believe. I don't know if it's 6 or 8. But in that many innings, he scored like 500 runs, which is the most by a player after that many innings. So that's first of all, that's insane to think about when you think of the history of ODI cricket. But honestly, the man has like 200s in like 6 or 8 innings. Started really well.
6 innings.
6
So
innings.
I'm just looking at his debut. He got a duck, golden duck.
Yeah, the funny thing about his debut, I remember that. It was against Australia. Mitchell Starc got him, pinned him LBW for a duck in his first ball duck as well, I believe.
Yeah, of the game.
And his average right now is 120.75.
Yeah, exactly, because of that one.
After getting a duck, and then like after just 5 innings later, your average is 121.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow.
Conway type shit.
Yeah, he's provides that perfect support to Quinton de Kock because de Kock is aggressive. The thing with Manan is he can be aggressive up front, but he can play the anchor role as well through the innings. So he can play both roles. So I can perfectly see him performing the same role as, like, for example, what Rohit Sharma does for India. You can be aggressive at the top of the order, but at the same time, you can play that anchor role while your opposite number, keeps the run rate going. Just provide that support while keeping a good strike rate throughout as well. Even though that 177 that he had in the third ODI came off like 169 balls, which, fun fact, is the third longest innings in an ODI. By number of balls faced, longest being Rohit Sharma's 173 balls for his 264. But he batted out a long time in that, so he has the stamina for it, and he provides support to whichever players need it. So I think he suits that top order position well. If we move down the order, we can talk about Temba Bavuma for a bit. When it comes to Bavuma, he's been pretty inconsistent when it comes to all formats, pretty much. But I think he's a better limited overs player than he is a test player. He's the captain of South Africa now because he seems to be the only constant other than de Kock. As per captaincy, I don't know. I couldn't really tell you about how his captaincy stands out from everyone else in the team. But as a player, decent, but not up to the mark. I think that if he wasn't captain, he would have probably been dropped by now. But then again, you can always improve. And as a number 3 in that crucial position, maybe the pressure of captaincy can bring out the best in you. So don't know much about that, but obviously you can move to the next position, Van der Dussen. Van der Dussen, I think, has been the most impressive South African player in the last 2-3 years, really. And he's stood up like no one has ever done, especially given the exodus of all the players like AB, Faf, and all. You need someone to stand up, and you have Van der Dussen. I think he averages like 70 plus in ODI cricket. And in T20s also, he's doing really well. I remember after the ODI World Cup, where he scored the most runs for South Africa in that ODI World Cup in 2019, he was averaging 85 at that point, I believe. Because I remember seeing his average, and he had scored 700 runs by that time, or something like that. Basically,
he averages like 75 in
75 right now, yeah. Because, I mean, obviously that's inflated by not outs. You can understand that. But then the thing with that is he, like I said before, he can provide both the roles of like a finisher, an anchor, and simple strike rotation, really. So he can play any role, and he can bat any position.
Yeah.
I've seen him play as an opener, a number 3, a number 5, a number 6. He can play whatever position you need him to. He stood up in each one of those positions in any format, really, as well. T20s, Test as well. I remember him playing some match-saving innings in Test cricket. So, for me, he's been the most impressive South African player of the last few years, really.
Just one thing I'm seeing right now in ODIs, he's only actually in all international cricket, he's only hit 100.
Yeah.
And in ODI, his average is about 75. So he's only played in 1 innings. I mean, I'm not sure if he's, really that capable of playing, like a 150 innings in a ODI.
Well, I mean, a couple of things to that. He plays a number 4. You wouldn't expect a 150 innings from him in the first place, really. When it comes to a person batting in the number 4 or 5 position, which he usually bats at, you want someone who can provide your support to openers if like a collapse happens early. And in the case that he has that 100, even that 100 came down the order in Test cricket. I believe he was batting number 6 that game, because he usually bats number 6 in Test cricket. But when he did that as well, it was a save from a collapse, I believe. Yet again, I think it's against England. I don't remember that far back. It was 2 years ago, but I do remember it was a back against the wall kind of innings. So that's usually what the man's more capable of. And the reason you see the 75 average despite no 100 in ODI cricket, it's the not outs. It's the same reason why, suppose like an MS Dhoni, for example, averages 51 despite batting lower order for like most of his career. It's the not outs. So you don't include the not outs in your average, right? So that's when the average gets inflated. But even then, he's still a consistent player. Like if you look at his runs per innings played, I think that's still pretty good, especially for a new.
Yeah, I remember. I think it was ODI. SA were playing. I mean, South Africa were playing like their last game in the World Cup or something. He was on 95 and he got out.
Yeah,
it was Australia.
Yeah.
So he would have got 100 there, but.
Yeah, I remember that innings as well because he started very slowly. I remember him starting off batting, and for the first 30-40 balls, he was batting a strike rate of 70 odd because he was supporting. I think Faf also hit 100 that game, if I'm not wrong. But he was supporting him throughout. And then in the last 10 overs, he really just exploded and he ended up like 95 off 90 something. So there's the acceleration I was talking about. He can play any role you want him to. And that's why he's very
Yeah,
flexible.
I just opened it and De Kock got a 50, Faf got 100 in 94
Yeah.
balls, and then Rassi Van Justin just got a 95 in 97.
That game was what I expected South Africa to play like the entire World Cup.
The
Really.
entire tournament, I know, right?
Because
Yeah.
they
It's such an
have the players.
upset.
They had the
It
players as
was,
well. And Amla didn't even play that game, I believe. I think it was Makram who
he
opened
didn't.
with
It was
the cup.
De Kock.
Yeah, but that's why I'm saying like that's how I expected them to play that tournament. But then they completely flopped in that tournament. I mean, for their standards, because they didn't.
Oh, was this their last match? I think it was, right?
It was there. It was the last match of the league stage, I believe.
Yeah.
So, well, yeah, I understand we're talking about South Africa a lot. It's just that there's more than
But,
enough to
yeah.
say about them, really. After Van der Dussen, you think of Miller, like David Miller. He's supposed to be the finisher role. I remember like 2 years ago, even last year, he wasn't really performing that consistently. He was probably hit like a 10 off 8 balls or something and hit 1-6 in the middle of that, and then being held as a finisher. But that's really what wins games. But nowadays, this is what I mean by saying like when the big players leave, that's when you have to step up. So that's what we've seen with David Miller as well. He's got back into form with his finishing ways. He's hit a couple of 50s in the ODIs that he's played recently. Even like just a couple of days ago against Ireland in the T20. I think it was yesterday actually. He hit 75 or something and rescued South Africa from a collapse against Ireland.
Yeah.
That happened like yesterday. So he still has that nick and form that he once had before. And as one by one, these South African players slowly step up in these scenarios. I think they're slowly building towards something good. I don't know how they're doing the T20 World Cup. That's a different story, especially with the group that they have. But we'll get into
Yeah,
it.
I don't think they can they have a good team, but I don't think it's enough for like to beat teams like India, Pakistan, England, Australia.
Yeah,
Australia maybe.
Then again,
Yeah.
you never know because it is T20s. It's the most unpredictable format, really. And
Yeah.
you could beat anyone in most cases there.
Ireland might win.
Yeah. Well, let's not get that far now, shall we? Well, now I guess just a couple of words on the bowling. Shamsi, number one T20 bowler. Many people are surprised by that because who's Shamsi, bro? I only know Imran Tahir when it comes to spinners from South Africa, but he's done really, really well. He picks up wickets every single game. I think in the series against Ireland, 2 matches done, he's picked a 3-fer and a 2-fer. In the series against West Indies, all 5 matches he conceded one whole boundary, just one boundary throughout that series, and that is some crazy shit to think about. His economy is very low, picks up wickets regularly, deserved number one bowler in the world in my opinion. But that proves that you need spinners in limited overs cricket. That's really what you need.
That does. That does.
Because you can have the pace that you want, but in the end, the middle overs is what controls a T20 game, and who controls the middle overs? It's the spin. So when you have good spinners, it works. George Linda also, he's come into the team recently as a left arm spinner, left arm finger spinner, complemented Shamsi perfectly. It's like a spin duo. All the good teams that you see in T20s, if you notice, most of them have a spin duo. You think England, Moeen Rashid. You think India, it used to be Kuldeep Chahal, now we have fuck all. But you have Australia, it is Zampa Agar. So it's like you have all these spin duos coming from all different countries, and that's what South Africa is slowly building to now. Obviously, you have the pace of Rabada and Giri and Nokia, who perform decently, like in terms of consistency. My economy is pretty high for some of them, but they pick up wickets. So I mean, that's their job. That's what they do. So overall, if I had to judge South Africa's limited overs team, I would say their T20 team is slightly better than their ODI team, but both are decent. Not the best, not the worst, but they're building towards something big, especially for 2023.
Yeah, another series that was very interesting was the England Pakistan. Now that was a very fun series to watch, in my perspective. They first played 3 ODIs and then they played 3 T20s. So like overall, England whitewashed England C team whitewashed Pakistan. 3-0 in the ODI series. And they beat Pakistan 2-1 in the T20 series. Now, talking about the ODI series, now this was just pure, um, uh, I don't know, skill from England. They used their bowlers really well, and Livingstone, he did really well. Malan didn't have he had a pretty rough series against Pakistan, and but a lot of England players, even I think Crawley, he was selected to debut in that match. And this one second, uh, this there was this bowler that came. He was getting
Mahmood,
wickets after
Sakib Mahmood.
wickets. Yeah, Saqib Mahmood. He like man's bowled 8 overs, 21 runs, 2 wickets. It just he destroyed Pakistan's top order. Like, and Pakistan top order is like Baba Rizwan, Fakhar Zaman, and yeah, it was very sad to see Pakistan lose in a series that they would have loved to win, and they should have won.
Yeah, I mean, interestingly enough, like I personally like looking at the team on paper. I was like, even without England's C team or whatever the people call it, I think against England's full strength team at the time, I thought Pakistan could provide a good fight to them because you have the openers are like Imam ul Haq and Fakhar Zaman, who themselves may not have been in these best of forms going into the series, but they're still renowned ODI players. And you obviously Babar Azam at number 3, number 1 ranked batsman, right? And Rizwan, who is in crazy form as of late, best year of his life probably in terms of cricketing standards. So I was rating them going into the series. I have no clue. I was very weird to see them fall apart like the way they did. It's not even the fact that they got whitewashed really. It's the more the fact that they got destroyed in 2 out of 3 games. Like one of the games was closer than the others, I remember, but like they got
Yeah, I mean, one of them
out.
actually, I don't know how they chased, what was that, 331 with such ease.
Yeah,
It-
exactly. That was really surprising.
Hmm.
I mean, and then there was what, Livingstone in T20 against Pakistan, just smashed a casual 42 ball century,
Yeah, in the
you know.
T20s, yeah.
Yeah, that was some good stuff from Livingstone. I think that would be in one of the best, his best moment in that
Yeah, well, the thing
tour.
about. What's that? Yeah.
You could.
Oh, yeah, no. The thing about Livingston is, like, he's a renowned, like, T20 player because he usually plays top order, sort of pinch hitter because he goes after the bowling from ball 1, 40 ball 100, proves that, really. But what this more cements to me is England's depth. We've seen more and more teams coming up with like squads of greater depth. We've seen India do with like 2 squads for different series. That's a whole new level of depth, really. But then obviously you have England themselves who have done that, and the series. The thing about this series is you can always have a B team or a C team, but what's more astounding is that team was called up 2 days before the series started, and they only had one practice session going into that first game, or the team together.
Right.
Yeah, so that being the case, it is even more astounding. It's like if it wasn't Pakistan, it would have been hailed as like almost like close to the India at Gaba kind of scenario because you're having so many different new players coming together. It's only that this series wasn't as grand a scale, really. Um, Still an amazing achievement in my opinion. But with the T20s, they had a stronger team. You obviously had Morgan come back, you had Butler, and all those guys come
Yeah,
back. But like you said, Livingston still shown 50, 40 ball 100, and they still beat
yeah, and he might
Pakistan.
be selected in the.
And
He
again,
probably will be in the starting 11 for the T20 World Cup, or he'll definitely be in the squad.
And again, Livingstone can also play as an all-rounder because I actually followed the BBL a lot when it was going on, and he actually came in to bowl a few overs and he took wickets at crucial times for his team, Perth Scotters. He came in and just bowled regular leg spinners and just took wickets. So if he can bat the way he did when he scored 100 or 40 balls and take a wicket or two, I mean, no one could ask anything more than that.
Yeah, that's the thing. He used to play as an all-rounder role. He was promoted to be a pinch hitter for his domestic sides. He's played for Rajasthan in that role before, not much, but he has. Um, so he provides that role of like a pinch hitter whenever you need him
Yeah.
to come in from ball one and start striking. Conveniently, Bo's leg spin. Bo's a bit of off spin as well if you need him to, but he's that kind of all rounder that a team is looking for in T20s, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and finally
Yeah.
something England finally did is put Moeen Ali at like top order.
Mm-hmm.
Took them so long. I
Well,
think they must have seen Dhoni do a smart use a smart tactics
well, I mean,
in CS.
I wouldn't attribute it to Dhoni because he's open for his domestic side forever. He bats in the top three for his domestic side in England always. In like
Oh,
ODIs, T20s, and even Tests. Sometimes like first class cricket, he bats in the top four for his domestic side. He's hit hundreds as
yeah.
well
Well, it
there.
clearly took him long in the international.
Well, the thing is with the international circuit, you have it's England, right? You have everyone who can bat in any position. You have Roy and Bairstow. You have Malan himself. You have
Bro.
Morgan. You have poor old Joe Root can't even get a game in the first 11 because you have fucking David Malan there, who's like number 2 ranked batsman. So England's Test captain can get into the T20 team. So when you have that kind of depth, it's very hard to fit players in positions that other
True.
players are better at. So
India problems. We we know what you feel like. But yeah,
yeah, so that would obviously with that kind of squad depth, those problems do come about. But at the same time, that only goes to show that anyone can step up for anyone in any position. So that's a scary kind of depth, really, isn't it?
yeah.
Yeah, I would also like to just see what England chooses as a top 15 for the World T20
Mm-hmm.
because they have simply
That's
got
gonna
so
be
much depth
interesting.
and all that, and
Was
like this death has come up very late, and even now you're seeing Phil Salt. He was playing very well in the BBL for many years, and now he's suddenly into contention for the England team. I mean, I honestly wouldn't be surprised to see him in the top 15 because he can be a good backup opener,
But
in my
who?
view.
to be fair,
Who?
Phil Salt, he opened in the ODIs as well for England. The thing
Okay.
is, like, I would still be surprised to see him in the top 15 because if we had to run off just the openers, just the people who can open for England, Jason Roy, Johnny Bairstow, David Malan, Joss Butler, even technically anyone in the middle order could do that. Livingston by trade is an opener, but he bats in the middle order for the T20I team. You have all these players who can bat in like 2-3 positions. So you have more than enough openers. I think the real question is the bowling attack that they'll take. Because they've been
Yeah, that's
rotating
what
bowlers. Archer hasn't played for ages. But then you have
I just hope I just hope Archer is fit for the World T20 because seeing England
Ooh.
without Archer is not going to be very fun, is it?
well, I
No,
mean,
I'm gonna call that he's gonna rest because he wants to play Ashes.
I was
He's
gonna
gonna do that.
I was gonna mention that, but I don't think they'd rest him for the World T20 just for that. I think they'd rest him through the India tests just so that he can play both the T20 World Cup and the Ashes. But I mean, if worst comes to worst, I think yeah, he would choose the Ashes over the T20 World Cup because that's hailed as our
I would
great
also.
England.
I mean,
Well, I mean, with the bowling as
I think
well.
England's T20 bowling is better than their Test bowling. No,
Well,
actually, not man.
no, I would not
I
agree with
mean,
that
yeah, that's
I
no,
would
no.
not agree with that. Not a chance.
because I
Yeah,
mean
no.
you have
But
think of the Test bowling attack: Anderson, Broad, Wokes, Archer, Sam Curran,
yeah,
just to
that
name
too
the top
Wokes, man.
five
So,
places.
Wokes is on fire.
so
Yeah,
you guys forgot Stoke.
yeah, Mark Wood, all those guys as well. That's the thing. But when it comes to the T20 bowling, they haven't kept a consistent bowling attack because they always
Yeah,
keep changing it
I've
up.
switched like,
But
and now they've also. I've never seen the Saqib Mahmood player before, but
well, I've seen him play in the past for England whenever they've rested all their main players. But the thing with that is he could make the squad, but like think of the top few players. You have Mark Wood, Jofra Archer. You'd have Chris Wokes himself. Those are just top 3 pacers. Chris Jordan
You
has
have
done
you
really
have
well.
Robinson also now. Ollie Robinson's back.
Well,
He's selected in the
Robinson
top 17.
Robinson is yeah. When
India.
it comes to tests, I'm more talking about T20s in this case. But like
Right. Never mind.
In the T20 circuit, yeah, you'd have Wokes himself, you'd have Archer, you'd have Mark Wood,
Willie.
yeah, David Willey, who's done really well, but then keeps getting dropped because people come back. I feel really sad for the
yeah.
guy. He was dropped for the World
What's
Cup
happening?
just for Archer, really, but he was doing really well before that because they had to
What's
drop
happened
Yeah.
Phil.
to Tyrell Mills? I remember he played for
Uh,
RCB for a couple of years and just dropped off
Uh,
bro, he's not
completely.
been seen since 2016. Uh,
he's disappeared.
he plays
He's
domestically, I'm
trying
sure,
to say
but
something more. Yeah.
he's I mean maybe he fell off. Honestly, I couldn't tell you. I don't want to misquote anything, so I don't know what's
Yeah.
happened. But he hasn't played for a while. But then the thing is, like even without, they have so many options. I haven't even mentioned Sam Curran, Tom Curran. Tom Curran isn't the
Yeah,
greatest in my
Tom
opinion
Curran.
when it comes to T20 bowling, but I mean he's still pretty decent when it comes to normal standards, but England standards probably not. Chris Jordan, he's probably the most
And
consistently
he's
played bowler in that England team because they keep rotating everyone else. But
also he can bat field.
he's a great fielder, one of the best fielders in the world as well, in my opinion. Chris Jordan, you see him
Okay.
take blinders and stuff like that. The man is,
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
yeah, the man is
That's
of
one thing I
character.
actually appreciate. That's one thing I appreciate the New Zealand team for a lot because if you see all their fielding has always been top notch. Like all teams want to reach a level on which New Zealand fields. Like even if you see Bolt, Saudi, Guptill, anyone, they're
Hmm.
all
Yeah,
spectacular
yeah, I
fielders and I
think
think that's a big
there was
difference.
a stat that I read about the World Test Championship. They had like a 90, no, 85% catch rate
That must be
In
throughout
the
the slip
slip,
everything.
catching catcher, right? Yeah.
in the
Yeah, probably
slip
slip
catching, that is.
catching.
The slip
Or
catching.
yeah, compare, and that was the highest compared to others.
But
Yeah, the next best was like 70. It was nowhere near 80.
the thing with that is
Next best
I don't
was
know.
actually
Okay, I don't know.
Australia. Yeah.
What makes it good is their fast bowlers can field. Like you mentioned, Saudi and Bolt are really good fielders themselves. Wagner can field as well. Usually you wouldn't expect fast bowlers to field that well, or maybe that's just an India thing. I don't know. But the no shade to the
Ashish
Indian
Nehra.
fast bowlers. It's just something that happens.
Ashish Nehra.
But like I mean, technically, even England, James Anderson is a slip fielder. Uh, but
Yeah,
so when you have all these players that you can feel, like you said, yeah, in New Zealand are top notch in the fielding department, and that often makes a difference. But back to England, I guess. So I'm just mentioning the fact that they have all these options. Spin, pretty much set in stone. Adil Rashid, one of the most consistent leg spinners of recent years in
yeah, he's gonna be
limited
definitely.
overs
He's
formats.
gonna be the starting one.
Yeah, he's in the starting 11 for sure when it comes to spinner in an England limited overs 11. So that's completely understandable. So England's well-rounded team, and that is just like a first choice as well. So
Yeah,
we're not even getting into the full reserves yet, and they've exhibited a ridiculous squad depth. They're just showing off how many players they can play. I would be surprised if they called up their second 11 for one of the county sides, and they'd probably beat the national team. So you never know at this point. But I mean, there's a lot of like backlash that Pakistan's team has gotten, like especially back home for them in Pakistan, because of their performance in England. A lot of backlash that is not deserved, in my opinion, even for a team that has lost that badly. Uh, but what do you think What do you think they need to improve in order to be a more competitive team?
England.
No, Pakistan.
Oh, Pakistan. Order. Three things
Middle
that
order.
improve.
Because they've got like two main batsmen by like who are Rizwan and Babar Azam.
Hmm.
They have other good batsmen too, but they're simply not consistent enough to, actually be really impactful over the long
No,
term.
the thing is, they are consistent. Like Rizwan has been like amazing in
I'm
2021, one of
I'm
the best
talking
players
about
so far.
I'm talking
But
about other players of the Pakistan team except Rizwan and
no, yeah,
Babar Azam.
exactly. Yeah, like they just like they are consistent, except like they just what is it? They rely on them too much. So if they fail,
Hmm.
then the whole team crumbles to pieces,
Well, the thing
and
is,
It's like
that's
it's like Team India on Kohli.
But the thing is, with like of recent times, I remember last year Hafiz had a crazy year in terms of T20 batting. He was on fire when it comes to T20s in the last 2 years, really. And then all of a sudden this year, maybe he's been shuffled around too much in terms of batting position. But they've done a lot of shuffling in terms of their batting. Fakir Zaman plays at number 5 now for some reason. Don't know where that came from, but uh,
yeah.
the, I guess there's just a case of trying to play everybody at once, and so you're not gonna find a correct place for everyone. Obviously, in my opinion, Babar and Rizwan should open. Like you want your best players to face the most balls in the case of a T20 game, and that's what's going to happen. But like you said, the middle order I think is messed up, but they're trying to fix that now by calling more players who performed well in the PSL in the past, which they hadn't done
Yeah,
before.
Pakistan just never like to play like their domestic league players. It's like they stick to the same players for years.
Yeah, the thing
Like
is,
there's stories of so many players that never got to debut for Pakistan, but like their domestic stats were like freaking insane.
yeah, I mean, I don't know exactly how much to attribute that to reasonable like reasons, but the thing is with that, like you said, there's many players who do really well in the domestic circuit and simply don't get picked on. Either they don't get picked at all, or they get picked when they're like 35, and they're not going to
Exactly.
be at their peak when they're 35. You would see a player with insane
Yeah, they'll
stats
play one game, they'll
at
fail, and then
34.
they'll drop.
Yeah, exactly. You'll see one. They're bringing a spinner who's 34 and would have peaked like 5 years before, but then they call him up because they see his stats. Obviously, doesn't perform as well as he would have, and then they drop him saying that he wasn't good enough. So they haven't dealt with their players, their domestic players, well at all, in my opinion. Obviously, they're trying to remedy that now. They've recalled Sohaib Maksud, who's done really well in the PSL. Azam Khan, who was recently called up and did decently. I think he batted only 10 balls that whole series, but then he hit a couple sixes, to be fair to him. So not much you can do in that scenario. But yeah, I'd say they're working on it. But in my opinion, and maybe people disagree with me for this, is I think their bowling has fallen off a bit when it comes to the limited over circuit. Obviously, you have people like Shaheen Afridi who are really good pacers, but even with the people who pick up wickets, and Hassan Ali, who's come back in ridiculous form in this year, really. But even with those people who pick up wickets, they're often in the limited over circuit at least very expensive.
Right.
They concede like 8 to 9 runs and over, and that's usually fine. Yeah, if you pick up 3 for 30, 3 for 35 and 4 overs, fair enough. But you need that bowler who will arrest the flow of runs, and otherwise you're going to end up giving away 200 runs or something like that. The only way to
Yeah, I
save
mean
yourself from that is hitting 200.
Shane Afridi has to carry the bowling, and there's
Well,
only
Maybe
so much he can do, and sometimes he can't even restrict like England because England has a strong team.
thing is, even with Shaheen
maybe
and
that
stuff,
arresting bowler for Pakistan is Shadab Khan because he's a spinner who bowls somewhat like Akshar Patel. He just bowls it flat on a place he wants it, and
It's like a
he's
straight
not.
ball, but just unplayable.
Yeah, exactly. So that I think he is a guy, but to be honest, even he's just the best economical bowler apart from Shaheen Afridi because Shaheen Afridi is basically just God for Pakistan at the moment. But Shadab Khan has been bowling really well. I've been following him quite a bit. I don't know. I mean, I
Even
follow
in
him.
PSL, he's done well.
Yeah, exactly. He is a really economical bowler even there, and he was the one who was controlling the run flow. So that's something each bowler should know how to do. If you're not able to take wickets, at least stop the run. Like that's something actually Jordan is really good at. Chris Jordan. He's not all like he's basically a death bowler, but sometimes when he comes into the bowling attack in an early time to try to get wickets, and he's not able to do that. He's at least not able to leak. He never leaks runs. That's the thing about Jordan. That's what makes him such a great death bowler.
hmm. Well, I mean,
So
a couple of things I want to say to that is, I mean, start from the beginning. Shadab Khan, when it comes to him, he's been renowned as an economical spinner, but of late, really, the last couple of years, I think his bowling's like not gotten better. Because a couple of years ago, when Pakistan were in that insane 11 series win streak that they were on in T20 cricket, that is when Shadab, along with Imad Wasim, were performing the best. They were playing as a perfect spin duo, complementing each other really well. But of late, I don't think Shadab's picked up wickets. That's why he's turned to batting. Like he's batted higher up the order in more than one occasion in the PSL. In the PSL, he was batting as a number 3 or number 4 batsman, really, rather than
Mhm.
spin bowler. But his bowling is getting better, I think. But then it's fallen off compared to the last 3 years, in my
I
opinion.
mean,
And
yeah, you played against people like Kohli, though.
well, I
you
mean,
know,
even without that, really, I'm talking about like the PSL or like in the
yeah.
T20s that Pakistan do play against whoever they really play, and the form hasn't been there, and I think that correlates clearly with Pakistan's form in T20s as such. But moving on from that as well, like you mentioned Jordan, The thing with Jordan is like he's economical for a pace bowler in the debt. Fair enough. But when it comes to his economy, I'm pretty sure it's above 8.5. I mean, of recent years at least. So basically, there's a lot of cricket that's happening now, and there's a lot of cricket to come in the next couple of months, lead up to the India versus England Test series that's coming. So there's a lot to look forward to in that. We can make a whole podcast about that. I'm sure the next week's I say next week. The next episode is probably going to be about the India versus England series. But then, as well as looking beyond that, you have the T20 World Cup, you have the Ashes, lots of stuff to come this year, lots of stuff to come in the next couple of months. So lots of cricket to talk about it. Whenever we talk about it, I'm not going to keep a fixed date, but whenever we talk about it, I'm sure there's a lot to talk about. And like we got Yug for this podcast, a big ordeal by the way. I had to sign a couple contracts for that. But like that, we're gonna have to get a lot more guests because I'm sure a lot more.
Yes.
People
So if you do want to join this podcast,
want to join the podcast, either comment below or DM one of us. Our socials will be linked in the descriptions, as will Yug's. And thank you, Yug, for coming on the podcast.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for having me. And I like to be back for India England because I have a lot of opinion about that too.
We'll see.
Right out.
I
sure
think you guys know where I'm gonna go with it. The anti-Kohli, all that. So
yeah.
so
Well, I'm thinking
anyways,
that, for that episode we could get multiple guests and have a little bit of a debate.
yeah, why not?
Honestly.
Probably going to be a bit of a chaotic one, but that's what you love to see when it comes to argument. So that's it for this episode. Not giving a schedule as to when the next one's going to come out. Let's just say next week and keep our fingers crossed. But thank you for listening to this one. If you're listening to this one at the moment, and check in the description, there should be a Spotify link because I would have put this whole thing up on Spotify. No problem.
Like, subscribe, and share.
Like, subscribe, share, and goodbye.